Looking for a rental apartment in Poland? I imagine you browse the offers and then you compare. There it is, you find a gem at a very attractive price. Everything looks beautiful and the landlord is dangling the keys and asks you to sign an agreement. Just quick signature on the contract and you can move in. Stop! Before you sign anything, check this video and protect yourself. Cześć, it's Weronika from Welcome Home, your guide to Poland, Polish real estate and rentals in particular. If we don't know each other yet, make sure to visit our channel and see other videos. I show foreigners what Poland is like and give you lots of practical advice on living here. Lately, I've been talking a lot about the investment potential in Poland and the city of Katowice, where Welcome Home is based. If you're interested in this topic of investing, take a peek at the Invest in Poland playlist on this channel. There you will find insights from the real estate market and our practical advice on investing. Today I'll talk about a topic that is very important for every tenant. If you are planning to rent an apartment in Poland and you are just before signing the contract, or even if you already rented an apartment, these 11 practical tips will secure your interest and avoid many unpleasant situations and surprising costs. Why am I telling this? Because as Welcome Home, we've been renting for years and we want it to be a trusted and safe solution. Unfortunately, we know from tenant stories that is not always the case. We've gathered most important cases that you as a tenant need to pay attention to. Suspiciously attractive rental offer. Competition is high, so rental ads tempt you with cheap rent. Suspiciously cheap. Only then, when you scroll down the offer, it may be written that in addition, there are also high administrative costs, plus an extra commission for the agency, plus an extra fee to the apartment owner, and it makes for a large amount. Read the ads carefully, especially everything in the small print and at the very bottom. And if you don't find such information, then ask if the ad definitely includes all costs. Low utilities costs. Pay attention to the amount of the advance payment for utilities and check what's included. 200 zlotys may look tempting in the offer, but an actual bill for 2000 zloty after the rental is no longer tempting. It's better to have a higher advance payment that will cover the cost of consumption and which you will pay regularly every month. How much should it be? It depends on what goes into it, for example, type of central heating. But based on our experience, a one-bedroom apartment with gas heating is about 400 to 500 zloty per month. Remember that meter status should be written down when you move in. Ask the landlord who checks the utility status during the lease and how you can be informed about potential underpayment or overpayment. Ask about the security deposit. When renting an apartment, it's normal for the tenant to pay a security deposit. This amount can be, according to the Polish law, a maximum of 6 times the rent, but practice shows that it's usually 1 to 2 times the rent. If the ad doesn't specify, ask the landlord right away. It's a lot of cash you will have to put down to start with. The time for returning the deposit after your rent expires is based on the law, and it's 30 working days after the end of the contract. Remember that the landlord can reduce the deposit after you move out, if any repairs are needed. This is what the deposit is for, but all costs must be justified. What is and what isn't justified? I tell you about it in the video Your Right as Tenant in Poland. Check it carefully. Take pictures, lots of pictures. If you damage anything that's not regular wear and tear, you'll have to pay for it. But there may be things that were broken before you moved in. During moving process, you don't have the opportunity to check everything. Some damage may also escape the landlord's attention. We have a good tip: take pictures, as many pictures as possible. We as a landlord do all the photo documentation during the move-in, but this is not the rule, but rather our own detailed procedures. If it's not in the standard, you do them in the landlord's presence. In the addition, you can add a note in the contract or the handover protocol that photos were taken on a move-in day. Bilingual rental agreement. This is absolutely crucial, but still not so obvious. Ads on Polish websites are already more and more often in English, but the agreement isn't. Specialized language requires a professional translation, and this is an additional cost. But you can't sign a contract you don't understand, right? What's important in order for such an agreement to be officially respected by the authorities, for example in the City Hall for registration, it must be bilingual in English and Polish too. Also, make sure who bears the cost of translation. For us, it's obvious that if the landlord agrees to rent to a foreigner, they should also take care of a decent translation. But it may only be obvious to us. Notary Act. Determine whether the landlord will want to sign the contract at the notary and who bears the cost. This is not a requirement, but completely normal in Poland. Sometimes the landlord wants additional security. The cost of a notary act is usually 400 to 500 zlotys. If the contract is signed with a foreigner, an official translator will also be necessary. Ask who pays and who finds them. We've heard of cases when the tenant came to the notary but was not told beforehand to look for a translator themselves and to pay too. Insurance is a must. Our tenants already know this because we keep reminding them on a regular basis, but it's still not common practice. So I repeat here and I beg you, please get civil liability insurance for yourself. It costs less than 100 zlotys per year and protects you from unintentional damage to your apartment and beyond. How to apply for it and what's included? We have a detailed guide on this topic on our website. You will find the link in the description below. It's really easy. Do you have to buy insurance? No, you don't, but its low cost is nothing compared to the damage you may cause. Well, and it protects you not only in the apartment, but also in normal life, like if you damage something in a store. An important note here. Sometimes the lease agreement says that if you don't get insurance, you have to pay an additional fee every month. Why such a provision? The landlord knows how big the risk is and wants to motivate you to get insurance. Of course, being fair, they should tell you about it up front and not surprise you with the cost at the end of the contract. But we know similar stories, so I prefer to warn you. Watch out for hidden costs. What do I mean by hidden costs? All those which you are not aware of because they were not pointed out at the beginning, are somewhere on the 16th page of the agreement you didn't read, and so on. What to pay particular attention to? Well, the most common things may be mandatory cleaning costs after moving out, or the required condition in which the apartment should be returned. For example, repainting the walls all white. Our advice? Be patient and avoid any rush. Make sure you have enough time to carefully read the agreement. In an ideal world, the landlord should point out any additional cost, but in the real world, it may be different. Ask questions and read the agreement. It's your right, but also your duty. Damage? It's not my problem. May you never hear such a sentence from your landlord, but it's better to know how to proceed in case of damage. Ask the landlord who is responsible for the apartment during the lease and who's your contact person. What should you do if something breaks or you need help? When something happens at night, on the weekend or during your vacation, any problems must be repaired quickly to minimize further damage and costs, and to allow you to use the apartment. Agree on what repairs are your responsibility and whether you need to seek a specialist yourself, as well as who pays for the eventual cost. At Welcome Home, we even replace light bulbs, but each landlord may have a different policy. Here I once again recommend you to check the already mentioned video on tenant rights and responsibilities. Early contract termination. In theory, according to Polish law, it's not possible to terminate a contract signed for a fixed period earlier. And even if you suddenly change plans, the landlord doesn't have to agree to that, or may ask you to look for a replacement tenant. This can be difficult. If your plans are flexible and you prefer to have an alternative, ask right away if there is a such possibility and be sure to write it in the contract. Verbal assurance, although binding by Polish law, are difficult to prove. We have it written down in every contract, so the process is clear and transparent. End of lease? What now? Lease agreements are signed for a fixed period, usually a year. What if you forget to tell them that you are moving out after that time? Nothing. You can simply move out. The landlord doesn't have the right to automatically extend your contract for another period. Of course, it's better to say beforehand that you intend to move out. For your safety, it's important to sign a handover protocol when giving the apartment back to the landlord. What if you want to stay? The landlord will probably ask you to sign an appendix to your agreement. If they don't, the contract goes into an indefined period. I hope I didn't scare you too much, May it all remain theory, but better to be aware. We wish you only wonderful rental experiences and caring landlords. Or maybe you have already experienced one of these situations? Let us know, we are curious to hear about it. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and browse the blog, where we share more relocation, rental and Poland-related tips. And if you are searching for a long-term place for yourself, consider Katowice. We've got you covered with nice rental apartments, and we'll be happy to support you with the rest. See you!